When countries assess their annual carbon dioxide emissions, they count up the cars and power stations, but bushfires are not included, presumably because they're deemed to be events beyond human control. In Australia, Victoria alone sees several 100,000 hectares burn each year. In both 2004 and the present summer, the figure has been over 1 million hectares.
The Japanese tea ceremony is a ritual influenced by Buddhism, in which green tea is prepared and served to a small group of guests in a peaceful setting. The ceremony can take as long as hours, and there are many traditional gestures that both server and the guest must perform.
The border itself between Mexico and the United States is fraught with a mix of urban and desert terrain and spans over 1,900 miles. Both the uninhabited areas of the border and urban areas are where the most drug trafficking and illegal crossings take place. Crime is prevalent in urban cities like El Paso, Texas, and San Diego, California.
Hundreds of millions of American people eat fast food every day without giving it too much thought, unaware of the subtle and not so subtle ramification of their purchases. They just grab their tray off the counter, find a table, take a seat, unwrap the paper, and dig in. The whole experience is transitory and soon forgotten. The training of an actor is an intensive process which requires curiosity, courage, and commitment. You will learn how to prepare for rehearsal, how to rehearse, and how to use independent and proactive processes that inform you to do the best work possible for both stage and screen. Internal combustion engine, enabling the driver to decide which source of power is appropriate for the travel requirements of given journey. Major US auto manufacturers are now developing feasible hybrid electric vehicles, and some are exploring fuel cell technology for their electric cars.
There is no single method of learning that guarantees success. How we learn depends on many different factors, and what works best for you may be the same approach used for the other students, even if they study the same course. We are all unique learners, although some patterns emerge within groups of students. A computer virus destroyed all my files. A lot of agricultural workers came to the East End to look for alternative work. Applicants for the course probably have a preference over English or journalism. Even with the permit, finding a parking spot on campus is still impossible. He's almost never in his office. I missed yesterday's lecture. Can I borrow your notes? You can find the student service desk located on the ground floor of the whole building. "39.5% of Californian residents don't speak English in the home." Please do not bring food into the classroom. Native discourse continues to be predominant in discussion of gender.
good local government. One of the questions I guessed a lot is how do we get good local government, good bureaucracy, and how do we see these positive changes come forward? And it's interesting because a lot of the time we pay attention to the pioneers, the people coming with new ideas, or sometimes we pay attention to the big bosses, the politicians, or the big civil servants. But it seems to me the really important people in seeing kind of widespread change are people like Morak. Morak is a manager for a council called North Funnish Council. It's in Scotland. And what Morak has done for many years now is constantly work away with her colleagues to figure out how do we keep making the system better. When they see somebody in the vein, they think what we can learn from them, what we can bring to our council. And when they see problems occurring in the bureaucracy and the systems, they think, how can we change these problems? And I suppose Morak means, Morak for me is an image of a good public servant, passionate about her own community and making that place as good as possible and able to use government and work through government structures to deliver positive change.
What we're going to discuss today is how the Port of London was discovered and what we discovered about it. Now, if you look at the historical records of Roman London, there's only about 14 actual references to London in antiquity, i.e. contemporary references, and of those, only one is in the 1st century. There are none at all in the 2nd or 3rd century. There's only one in the late 3rd century, and there's 4 in the 4th century. So if you're a historian trying to write a history of Roman London, it's very difficult. You don't really have much data. You're going to depend on the archaeological evidence, the material evidence of the port and indeed the town to have any understanding of what happened then. And so what we're looking at here is how did we discover about the Port of London? There is no historical documentations, no customs books, no tariffs, no idea of the taxes. We have to understand the port entirely from the archaeological evidence. So that's what we're going to do today. So if we move on to the next slide. I love live streaming, so thank you very much.
Boys and girls performance. You can see that the two charts each give quite a different picture of the performance of boys and girls in the two key subjects of math and English. It shows that in English, girls consistently outperform boys over a period of 6 years, achieving scores about 10% above their male peers. There is quite a different picture when we look at the math results with no real difference between genders in the results. What is the explanation for these key differences? To answer this question, researchers look at biological and cognitive factors and a range of social factors. The interaction between those different components in early childhood development is seen as maintained and reinforced in the school context, and this leads to distant gender patterns of behavior and skills with direct consequences for school performance and achievement. The ultimate uses of this evidence are to show that biological factors, such as patterns of cognitive developments, are closely linked to social factors, such as learned gender categories. These cognitive skills are learned both preschool and subsequently at school, supported by the responses of teachers, creating a reinforcement of patterns.
How many days are in a leap year?
What is the opposite of majority? What is the area of the lowland between hills or mountains? What do people usually use to cut food? In some calendars, a week starts from Sundays. What is the other day that usually starts a week? What is the political system where the country is ruled by a king or a queen?
What is the activity of inhalation of tobacco substance that is harmful to our health? What do meter and millimeter measure? Height or length? What is the most catching line of the newspaper? Would you go to a pharmacy or a surgery to get a prescription filled after visiting a doctor?